up, family? It's me, Dr. Larry. I'm your favorite cousin, your favorite friend, your favorite brother, your favorite uncle, your best friend's best friend, Dr. Larry. What's up? Y'all, that song a bop. That song be jamming. I'm Every Woman, Whitney Houston, and the Shaka Khan version that it was a remake of. A bop. Be jamming, 100%. Anyway, I know you saw the title, so we'll get there. That's why the song. Anyhow, you know what I ask. First of all, how are y'all doing? That's the very first thing. How y'all doing out there? I know if it's any indication of how y'all look. Am I good? Is it any indication of how y'all look? Y'all are doing great. So welcome to the table. Have a seat. Also, let me go ahead and ask you, just go ahead and subscribe because, you know, we have a good time here. We have fun, we talk, we also go deep. So it's informational, it's educational, but it's also fun, it's hilarious. It's just me being me pretty much on camera, talking to you guys, having you guys come and sit with me. So go ahead and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get the videos when I post on Mondays and on Thursdays. For those of you who are new, perhaps, I am Dr. Larry Smith. I am a certified master life coach. I have a business, Live For You Coaching. That is my practice. You can learn more at www.liveforyoucoaching.com. You can also go and meet me on social media at Dr. Larry Smith on Instagram and on Facebook. You can find me, we can connect, you can get to know. I have a very quirky sense of humor. If you know me on like a personal interrelational level, you get a lot of that here, but I'm actually very quirky and very I'm me. I'm me. I'm present. I'm who I am. So anyway, welcome to the table. Have a seat, subscribe, comment, do what you do, but welcome. Today is actually kind of funny and fun and interesting and cool to me. Actually, I'm sure we've all been kind of like watching media, watching the news, YouTube, Facebook, the news. And we recently saw the story of Wendy Williams when she made some comments on her show of, I think she said, men stop trying to be women, you're not women, you'll never be women, or something to that nature. I think she made the comment of that of some sort. And it was in response to Billy Porter's Oscar outfit, and he does this quite often. You know, you see the Oscar clothes that Billy Porter wears, right? Outlandish, over the top, extra, but also in what people would think would be feminine attire. High heels, makeup, dresses, the whole whatever. It's his style, he rocks it, and it's always shocking, seems to be, every time he's at an award show. People always talk about what he has on or what he wore during the red carpet or whatever. And so because of the Wendy Williams situation and some other things like Dwayne Wade, we did a video on him accepting Zai, his daughter. We also have other things like there's transgenderism and people who are transgender shows like Pose and other shows and people like Tyler Perry with the Medea costume or Martin Lawrence and the Big Mama and all of these other things. And we even got people who link in homosexuality and same gender loving into that same group. And in all of those things in people's mind, as it relates to black men, they feel like there is an all-out assault on black masculinity. That they're attacking the black male, they're attacking black masculinity, they're emasculating us in some sort of compassion, some sort of fashion from all of that. And because I think people feel because these are public figures that this is going to have somehow of a influence on not just what people think of black men, but also on what people think of themselves as black men or as black kids or as black boys, whatever the case may be. They feel people are going to feel that way. And so the question comes, is there an attack on black masculinity? Is this something that we've seen where there's been an intentional action on the part of the media to emasculate black men? My simple answer to that question is no, but also I couldn't speak for the media. But I don't really see that from my perspective and vantage point. I will say this about media, that a lot of times as it relates to Black people, we always get the extreme versions of who we are. We never really get, it's almost like no one in media seems to really fully know any Black people on an interpersonal level, on a day-to-day level. And so we always get kind of these extreme versions or parodies of actually who we are. So take, for example, I remember for a long time on television, it was the extreme of femininity. It was over hypermasculinity in the gangster image, and the over sexually aggressive, and the Black man who tended to demonstrate his masculinity in excess. And so we were seeing that all the time on television. And nobody complained in the Black community about that. They kind of just allowed that to be, when that hypermasculinity that was being displayed wasn't a representation of Black men, and was actually kind of toxic as well. If you want to say. That was one extreme. And then I think there's also the other extremes of the men on film, and the Medea character, and Man in a Dress, and Billy Porter, and all this stuff, which is the opposite extreme of what that hypermasculinity was. It's kind of a hyperfeminization almost of Black people. So what I believe simply is that just the media really don't have full understanding or a clue about what Black men are, or who Black men are. There are some who are on that hyper masculine scale, and there are some who are on that hyper feminine scale, but I believe the vast majority of us are somewhere in the middle. We respond how we respond given whatever circumstances. I fully believe that's where majority of Black men are. And I believe that's just where, no matter what representation we have on media, I believe that's where we're going to be, because whether we know it or not, feminization, masculinization, all those things happen naturally, right? Either or, in all people, male and female. But we'll get with that later. And so I see that what happened was there was a response in the Black community. And there's always a response to this. And I see it in diverse ways. I see different responses. I see some say, let people live. I'm more of the school of let people live. Don't, when Wendy gave her comments, there were some people who were like sensitive about it, who didn't like it. She got a huge backlash from the gay community. And then from women, Black women, they were like, well, I agree with her. They will never be women. They will never be Black women. So they need to stop trying. And then there were Black men who were kind of like, it's disgusting and they shouldn't dress like that. That's emasculating and all of this stuff. My response was, let people live. Let people live. And because I put Black, I first love Black, I'm not going to go lash out on Wendy Williams or lash out at any Black person publicly. I just say, let people live, and the responses are going to happen. You cannot expect someone to always agree with you or anything. And you cannot expect someone, whether they're public or not, to not have a response to something that they're observing. So let people live, whether or not you're being responded about, or whether or not you're doing something to make people respond, or you're responding to what someone is doing. Let it go. Let people respond. But I do think that there was a hypersensitive response in the Black community to Black men in heels and Black men in dresses. And I think I've said this once before in a video. I know that some of it comes from the emasculation, the intentional emasculation that was part of the slavery experience. But I also believe a lot of it comes from other places. One comes from religion. Somehow, some way, in some capacity, we have managed to use religion as a way of policing the Black community. We've done that for years. Some of us still do that. That's not God's way. God created this. God created that. God created Adam. God created Eve. God created man. God created woman. And so whenever someone's acting out of what we feel our norms are based on what God creations are, all of a sudden people have these feelings about that stuff. And they use religion as a way to try to police it. But if we're being honest and if we're being clear, wearing clothes goes against from what God created. Let that sink in. Humans were created naked according to the story, right? So humans were created naked. According to the Bible, we weren't clothed. So wearing clothes in general delineates kind of a diversion from what God created. And then when you take it a step even further, who wears what became a human social construct that had been changed and challenged and moved and morphed over the course of years. Women didn't start wearing high heels. Men did. Dresses weren't considered dresses, but they were considered clothes that men wore that would look like what we would consider a dress be today. Now that we say it's women's outfit, women are to wear. And that's changed over the course of thousands of years in human history, in which our perceptions of what we wear, or if we're even going to wear something, changed. And so the reality of it is that the response based on religion doesn't hold really merit, right? That's just one thing that you can say, okay, based on religion, that can't be upheld. Because if we uphold specifically what the Bible says, and if we're interpreting it so clearly as many people claim to, then we'll just be all running around here naked. That's an option. But then there'll be a problem with that, because that's immorality, and what will we tell our kids? So people will complain using religion, and it's just weird. Another thing that people use is just fear. This ideal that because men are dressing a certain way, or because there's homosexuality, same gender loving, or because there is something transgenderism, there is a fear that the male part of our race and of our culture will somehow manage to disappear. And I legitimately see this fear all the time. Thirst is real, and we'll leave it at that. But there's a lot of people who are feared. There's a phobia that at some point there'd be no black men left to reproduce the population. Because of homosexuality, because of transgenderism, or whatever other things. Mass incarceration, all of these things. There's a whole lot of things. But I think people are fearful of that shift. Ladies and gentlemen, whomever's watching, I do not foresee that ever being a problem. And I think we need to just relax as a people. There's one thing about being vigilant about what's best for you, but at the end of the day, there is no commonality on what's best for us, especially if it's something not hurting someone else. And so I think it is important that we don't over-respond to things that are not of a huge deal, life-changing, altering world. If you are wondering what you should tell your kids, then maybe you should be wondering what you're telling yourself first. Because anything you're going to pass on to your kids is going to be a reflection of the logic and the thoughts, negative or positive, you have within yourself. My hope is that it is a healthy thought, that you are processing what you're observing in a healthy way, as to not pass the negativity and the unhealthiness down to your children, creating a new generation of unhealthy people. That just adds to my work. I appreciate the business, but I'd much rather a healthy society than to have to coach unhealthy people because of what they processed and learned from their unhealthy thinking parents. If that makes any kind of sense, right? So I think it's important at this juncture to talk about masculinity, right? The big word in the room is masculinity. And I think a lot of our conversation in society, at least American society, but more specifically in the Black community, is out of fear, phobia, misogyny, and all kinds of issues against Black femininity, right? I really do. I think that there is a deep level of anti-feminine in the Black community, whether or not it's how we don't want to present as Black men, whether or not it is how we feel about and treat the Black woman. There is a deep-seated level of phobia, fear, angst, animosity against the feminine. Masculinity is not the opposite of femininity. Masculinity is the companion of femininity, right? We teach it as an opposite. We teach that this is femininity and this is masculinity and this is what they should look like. But in reality, they go hand in hand. If we look at the yin and the yang, right? The symbol, the Buddhist symbol of yin and yang, or the Taoist symbol of yin and yang, they're complementing each other. They're part of each other. That yin is in that yang, and that yang is in that yin. And that yin wouldn't exist without that yang, and that yang would not exist without that yin. They complement one another. And they're both needed for the well-circled balance that is the yin and yang. And that's a representation of the masculine and of the feminine, right? They complement each other. They work with one another. They enhance one another, and each of them need each other. So when we talk about masculinity, black male masculinity, if there isn't a sprinkle of femininity there, then it is over masculinity. Same thing with femininity. If there isn't a sprinkling of masculinity there, then it's over femininity. And what winds up happening is we live in the extremes, right? You're either all in or you're all out, or you're all here or you're all there. There's never a middle ground where there is balance and temperance and healthiness, where we're able to manage the fine line between the two. And so you see things and you witness things, but at the end of the day, we fail to realize that what we're witnessing is the extremities. What we're witnessing is extreme usage of either the masculine of the feminine. And in either way, it's not a healthy way of being. Now, let's be clear. Let's look at Billy Porter. Billy Porter wears his outfits to the Oscars and to the Emmys and to the Grammys, and you see him in these outfits. But he's not walking around everywhere he goes in those outfits. Logic, right? Logic would tell you that Billy Porter's not waking up in lashes and big old dresses and the extreme stuff that he wears at the Oscars, the Emmys, or the Grammys. So obviously this is done for attention. This is done for show. This is done possibly to make a message, possibly to break down these walls that we've built between the masculine and the feminine. But in his everyday life, he just shows up, as the majority of us show up, somewhere in the middle. But we make a lot of noise over what he wears as a show at the Oscars, the Emmys, or the Grammys. We over-respond. Masculinity can't be shown, ladies and gentlemen, viewers and family, those who are watching. It can't be shown. It's who you are. A masculine man might have feminine traits but take care of his family. That's masculinity. A feminine man might protect people, protect women, protect children, build society. That's masculine energy. And so you have to be able to understand that a healthy person has both, can engage both, can interweave with both. I can hold a baby. I'm not going to be rough with the baby and say, you got to be tough, because being tough with this baby, that's hypermasculinity in an inappropriate situation. But I'm going to be gentle and nurturing and compassionate and loving and soft, feminine, for that circumstance that I am in, carrying and holding that baby. It would be wonderful one day to get rid of the labels and the barriers that blocks us from full expression. But until that day, we got to recognize what the expression is and be able to understand that the threat that we're creating is the threat in our mind. If your mind tells you that there's an assault on black men, then that's what it's going to be for you. In my mind, I don't see that. I see people just trying to show themselves up, trying to express and be present with however they feel in whatever moment. And sometimes that expression comes across hyper masculine, and sometimes that expression comes across hyper feminine, but it is not my job to judge it and use it as something to see the entire experience of the community and what's happening through the whole lenses of what's happening to the community. I see people just expressing themselves. My job as a person is to be able to say, you know what, this is that expression. I do not take it on. I do not put it into my own self, and I just live, and I let people live. You know, I don't see it as anything deeper than what I am physically seeing. I personally believe that all of what we're seeing is the illusion. The reality is the stuff that's deeper than is within us and that permeates around us. That's the reality. But all this other stuff is just human expression. And so therefore there is no takeover of a Black community when you just see things on a deeper level than that. And so it's so important that we don't. Ladies, men who wear dresses and heels don't want to be women. And if they did want to be women, they'll go get the sex change. And even if they do get the sex change, that could be something far deeper than we know. Maybe there's a gender thing that we have no way of seeing presently. But we can't judge it from the outside because we are just the outsiders. So that notion that men who wear heels and dresses want to be women is an old archaic notion based on ignorance that needs to be let go. Men who wear heels, wear your heels. But just know that people are going to say something about it. So Wendy had every response and every right to have a response. And it's okay. Let her have it. This cancel culture thing about things like that is completely obnoxious. Let it go. Let people live. Let people live. Right? And remember, men, Black men, masculinity isn't what you can put on or take off. It's not that shallow. It's not how you can act and demonstrate. It's not that shallow. It's not what you can say and don't say. It's not that shallow. It's not the non-show of emotions. It is not that shallow. It is how you present in this world. What are you doing? How are you showing up? What are you giving? What is your contribution? And also be comfortable allowing some glimmer of the feminine to come into your soul so that you can be a whole person. Because remember, there is no yin without the yang, or any yang without the yin. That's it. That's it. So that was our conversation. I hope it gave you something. I hope you were comfortable in learning something and you're able to take things in. And we can share these kind of conversations. There's a healthy way of doing everything, and it all revolves around how we're thinking. If we can change our thought, we can change our lives. That is just the way it is. So I'm glad to see you at this table. Remember, we'll be here every Monday and Thursday. That is what we do. We bring up topics, generally on Thursday, like this. And so we will have these conversations, and I welcome anybody. Even if you're not an African-American male between the ages of 18 and 40, I still recommend you come and sit at the table with us because you're family too. And maybe our lessons with each other will help you in some capacity for yourself. I love all of you. And remember that I will see you in the next video.